Let's now talk about the third factor of production, land. It may be farmland used for growing some agricultural products, or land or space in a city used for business offices or production facilities. In many cases, its amount is fixed, so the supply curve is vertical. No increase in the price can lead to an increase in supply, and vice versa. If the price falls to a very low level, all the land or office space will be still offered for rent. However, the demand curve in this market may look like all other markets. It may have a negative slope. So, the market price for using land, it's called rent, is determined by the intersection of the demand and supply curves. What is interesting, if demand changes, it will lead only to change in price, but not in quantity. This is a typical interpretation of a land market, but in reality, it may not be always like this. First, some landowners may refuse to rent the land if it becomes too cheap. They may prefer to use this land by themselves. Remember our example with a bakery. When the market rent for baker's property became too high, the baker decided to stop this business and rent the property out. It means that an increase in rent may lead to an increase in the market supply of office space. So the supply curve is not absolutely vertical. Second, in the long run, this supply curve may become positively sloped because some entrepreneurs may invest into creating new office space in the city. For example, to build new multi-store buildings or to go underground. Even in this case, in the case of farmland, if the farming business becomes very attractive, some other types of land may be reoriented for farming use, and the supply curve for farmland may also have a slight positive slope. Now, we can raise a very interesting question. Theoretically, every resource should have two prices. First, a rental price or payment for using this resource for a limited period of time. For labor market, this payment is wage or salary. For capital market, this payment is interest rate. For land market, it's rent. And there is a second type of price, purchase price, or payment to acquire property rights for this resource. The purchase price was not relevant in the case of labor markets because the workers cannot sell the property rights for themselves. And it was not relevant in the case of capital market because the price of property rights for 1 million rubles is 1 million rubles. But the purchase price is quite relevant in the case of land. So how is the purchase price determined? Let us consider an example. This is an apartment in the center of St. Petersburg. Suppose that this apartment may be rented for 40,000 rubles per month. This is the rental price of this apartment. But what is its purchase price? Okay, the rental price is determined in the rental housing market with its own supply and demand curves, the left-hand diagram. And the purchase price, now you have a very good experience in applying supply and demand concepts to any problem. So you may easily assume that there is a market for property rights for apartments with its own supply and demand curves. And the purchase price is determined in this market. Let us draw this market on the right-hand diagram. Please note that the vertical axis here has a different scale because the purchase price is usually many times higher than the rental price. Well, formally, this is a correct application of the demand and supply model, but essentially, it doesn't provide an answer to our main question: what is the relationship between the two prices? Okay, let's think. What is the purpose of buying an apartment? There may be two purposes: to live in, to rent it out for money. In both cases, we need to consider alternative options or opportunity costs. A consumer, instead of buying an apartment, may rent it and invest money somewhere else. Let's suppose that the best alternative is bank deposit. It's safe and pays a guaranteed income. So the alternative income is determined by the interest rate for the bank deposit. Let it be 10% annual rate. So we have two alternatives: to buy an apartment, lose the interest income, and don't pay the rent, or to put money in the bank, earn the interest income, and pay the rent. What is the rational decision in this case? It depends on the levels of interest and rent. Let us calculate the annual rent. 40,000 multiplied by 12 is 480,000 rubles. Let's suppose that the purchase price of the apartment is 6 million rubles. Then the annual interest is 600,000, which is bigger than the annual rent. So it makes sense not to buy an apartment, but to put the money in the bank, earn 600,000, pay 480,000 as a rent, and there will be some residual 120,000 rubles, which may be used for consumption. So if the annual interest rate is higher than the annual rent, then people will prefer not to buy apartments and to put money in bank deposits. It means that the demand curve in the property rights market will move to the left. Fewer people will want to buy property rights. And the supply curve will start moving to the right. More people will want to sell their apartments and to put money in the bank. So the equilibrium purchase price will start decreasing. When will this process stop? When the purchase price drops to the level where the annual interest income will become equal to annual rent payments. It means the price of 4.8 million. If you put this money in the bank, you will earn 480,000 rubles per year. So it becomes equivalent to put money in the bank or to buy the property. This is a point of indifference or equilibrium in the property rights market. A similar story will happen if the annual interest income is initially lower than the annual rent. Let's suppose that the purchase price for apartment is 3 million. Then the annual interest income is 300,000 rubles. It means that now investments in apartments become more profitable than earning interest income from bank deposits. So many people with money, investors, will prefer to take their money from bank deposits and to buy property rights for apartments and then rent these apartments to earn the rent. So the demand curve for apartments will move to the right, and the supply curve for apartments will move to the left, because current owners of the apartments will be less interested in selling them. So the purchase price will eventually increase until it reaches the equilibrium price of 4.8 million rubles. As you see, the market will find this equilibrium price regardless of the initial combination of these prices. The money will flow between the property rights market and the bank deposits market until the annual interest income becomes equal to annual rent income. This is how the purchase price for any apartments, office, land, or another real estate is determined. Now, let's summarize. What did you learn from this topic? All markets may be described with supply and demand. All markets are interconnected, and there is a general equilibrium in all these markets. Rational choice and maximization hypothesis is a very useful methodological assumption. Sure, this was a simplified model of reality. We did not discuss the mortgage mechanism, the desire of people to own their own special house instead of renting it, inflation, and many other factors. With these additional factors, our analysis would become more complex. But its basic principles, rational choice, supply and demand interaction, equal return in alternative variance, will be just the same.